Welcome to session 9 of 9, closing and negotiating. At some point, all of us are going to get to closing and negotiating. And this may be with the job search that we're in right now. It may be with a sale that we're doing. It may be with a contract set of work that we're doing. So at some point, we're going to need closing and negotiating. Again, my perspective here is that from a chief people officer. So what makes it most amenable to me and the HR and the people team when people want to close and negotiate? And I'll just start with, in all of my time and in my colleagues' time, I've heard about maybe one such case, but I've never seen that somebody negotiates to such a degree that the offer is withdrawn. There are other things that can go on during the interview, but what I'm saying is I would like to give you permission to negotiate. Today, we're going to talk about leading to closing with more confidence so that you can progress and move the conversation towards closing, even if the company is a little bit wishy-washy or doesn't have a fast time frame. So how can you lead more towards closing, and then how can you negotiate well? Lead to closing with more confidence. I'm going to start with a story because that's how I remember this. This made an impact on me. I've hired many people, but I've also hired, which is much closer to my heart, I've hired people for my team, for the HR team. So this is a very specific situation on my team, on the people team. We'd done a big search. Actually, this was before all the layoffs, and we got easily 200. I can't remember how many, but 200 applicants for this one role that was going to be on my team, a fairly senior role. And of the 200 applicants, our screener, our recruiter, interviewed something like 20 to 30, and then she sent me something like 5 to 10 to interview, and those also interviewed with a hiring team. And that was probably, or 2 additional interviews for each of them. So we came down to 2 people. There were 2 that were the top, that I believed were the top, that the other people on the interviewing panel believed were the top. And we had people outside of HR. I'm making this more in depth. Here's what happened. There were 2 people. They were the top 2 contenders. I actually was not 100% sure who the better person would be for this role. And I was leaning towards one of them. Let me call them person A and person B. And let me tell you in advance, person A got the job, just so you're like thinking about them in that way. So there was person A and person B, 2 very top contenders, very strong background. They seemed like they would collaborate well with our team and with the people that they spoke with. Really strong, both on background, but also in terms of how we imagined that they would be specifically in this role. So nothing really stood out for one or other than one specific area that was important work-wise that person A was a little stronger on. Not enough to necessarily push person A over the edge. So person A wanted to move this along, and person A was a consultant at the time, was an HR consultant. So person A didn't really want to keep sitting around being a consultant or sort of fizzling out their projects if a job offer was coming from us. And so, I hate to say this, my bad, and you will see other people on the hiring manager front who were there. I couldn't make this decision for a week. I spoke to people, I thought about it. It was really in my hands after getting all the input, and it still took me, I just wasn't sure between these 2. I had a follow-up conversation with person A and with person B, and I was pretty sure. And then finally, it just clicked in some of the conversations we were having internally and the things and the projects that needed to come on. So first of all, you're going to see this. Internally, someone may just not be sure, or maybe looking for information, or maybe trying to figure something out, or maybe planning their horizon. So person A, a great person, so thrilled that we brought person A on. But at the time, finally I made the decision. But what person A did in that time while I was making the decision is person A reached out to their point person. I wasn't the point person. They had an internal point person that was their recruiter. Person A reached out several times, but not with the typical, hey, let's follow up, like, how's it going? What are you doing? Person A reached out with, hey, remember what we talked about? By the way, this company is doing this on the topic that we talked about, let's say performance reviews. He reached out again and said, oh, we also mentioned this part about succession planning. And I didn't give you this example, but I just wanted to tell you 2 takeaways that I had from a previous role where I did succession planning were this. So it didn't follow up with me, the hiring manager, but followed up with their point person, who of course forwarded this information to me. I think that person A followed up easily 3 or 4 times. In this time that Senya, with her undecided head, was still not sure of which one. The last 2 messages that person A would be delighted to share any information with you if there's anything that you need to know, like a willingness to share information. Sure, great. That's almost like a non-email. We expect that people may send that. But then person A wrote to our point person, let's say we were in April, I'm just trying to figure out my incoming work stack as a consultant for the month of May. Can you give me a sense of what you're thinking about with the timing, just so I can start to plan my month of May in terms of the work that I'll take on? I mean, that's really nice, right? It's not a ton of pressure. It's letting us know that he's working on other things. It's a little bit of a, Senya, you dodo bird. Come on, get on with it, move it. And zero hard feelings towards this person. Called the person, made an offer. The person agreed. The person started the following week. I've never had someone start that fast. I think it was within 3 days. I think the offer was in the middle of the week and the person started on Monday. I've never had someone start that fast. Also, if you notice that whole, like, I've got a lot of projects that I'm winding down and that I can take on in May, I don't know to what degree the person was working 40 hours a week at their consultant job, but very thoughtful, very socially intelligent messages. The follow-ups made me feel more confident of the decision. It was a particular type of work that we needed. That person A did a little bit better, but it was so incrementally better. It may not have swayed it the other. But when you get down to an offer, that's extremely effective. I just received an offer. I just received a verbal offer, but I'm extremely interested in this position. That's super effective. Yes, that's 100% effective. The company is usually not in a rush, whether it's my indecisiveness of that week or the company. And you know what else happened? We've talked about it on these calls. Sometimes a role gets postponed. Sometimes a role was very active and then it needs to get postponed for some business decisions. So sometimes the company is not in a rush. What do you do in situations like that? How do you follow up thoughtfully? Set an expectation during your interview process. So let's say Corey is your recruiter and you've been speaking with Corey, and at the end of the conversation, you'll say, what's the best way to follow up? Are you going to be my point person? When should I expect that you would follow up? And Corey could say something like, today is Thursday, I'll follow up with you on Tuesday. Great. So Corey, if I don't happen to hear from you on Tuesday, what's the best way for me to follow up with you on that day? Would you like me to text you really briefly? You want email? You want a phone call? What would be the best way for us to make sure to connect? And if your update is, I don't have an update, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with us connecting and you just telling me, I don't have an update. Good to connect with you, Senya, but I will keep looking into it. Give him permission to say no. If you don't have info, like, still share with me. During the interview process, clarify that timing. Afterwards, not just with writing to follow up. And I'll tell you why. It means nothing. Really, I don't mean to be mean to all of us, but it doesn't mean that much to a recruiter. A recruiter might think, oh, I can answer this. And not just a recruiter, even if you write a hiring man, the person at the company might think, oh, I can answer this in 3 days, in 4 days. I'm figuring it out anyway. So if you really want an answer, it's not the most effective. So what can you do? What are some yeses to follow up thoughtfully? We've talked previously here about this 12 to 15 pieces of content in order to secure a sale. So think about it that way. I've had a conversation. Let's say I've met with the recruiter, with the hiring manager, and maybe 2 others. There are things that made me think of you. So if I'm interviewing and I spoke with Corey, oh, Corey, you talked to me about this aspect of what's important on the people team at your company. Well, this made me think of you in the conversation we had. Everybody wants to hear made me think of you. Who doesn't want to hear that something made you think of them? So it could be an HBR article or similar, so something in the business world that you think would be relevant to them. It doesn't have to be about something you talked about. It can be about something that you just think may be helpful to them or relevant to them. This is a super small comment here. Ideally, that there's not a firewall, like HBR has a lot of firewalls that you can't get in, you have to pay. But if it does, maybe this is such a minor point, but I just don't want you to be in a situation where you're emailing someone and they say, oh, thanks, I can't get in. Although that's not bad either, right? Because then they're communicating back with you. But you consider pasting it into the body of an email if it's something you really want to share with someone. You might share a LinkedIn post by somebody that this person, your hiring manager, the recruiter, would appreciate, a leader that this person might be interested in following, and something that the leader said. So something that made me think. Those are 12 to 15 pieces of more generic content. Generic doesn't mean bad, it just means not you specific. And then there might be some you specific things, and I've already mentioned these out loud, but here's something that I thought you'd enjoy seeing. Like, for example, if I worked on, I happen to, what do I have? I have a pen here. If I happen to work on the launch of these pens and there's something in the news about it, oh, by the way, remember what I told you about? This was in the news a week ago. Something about specific to me, something I thought you'd enjoy seeing. You said it would be this timing. Like with Corey, the conversation we just had. Hey, Corey, you said it would be Tuesday. I reached out to you on Tuesday. Now it's Wednesday. What do you need anything else from me? So you can certainly ask for, is there anything else needed? There's no star against you or any bad flag for doing that. And then this is exactly what person A did when it's been a long time, or you feel like it's been a long time. I'm trying to plan taking on additional clients for ... And could you give me a sense of when you think you'll come to a decision? It's okay to share some information if you have forward progress with other companies. They're not misaligned, like one offer is this week, another isn't close to making an offer. So when there are regular hirings and you went through the whole process and the people told you, we like everything, but we need the right project to join, how often can you get back to them to check status? All the time, but not every day, but regularly. Let's say you put something on your own calendar. Every Tuesday, I'll ping them with. But again, I would say try to make it those 12 to 15 pieces of information. Something that, oh, this made me think about you. Or here's a client success story from something I just did. Seeing your name pop up is a reminder already. And then you could, in some of those, add, how are the projects going? What's going on? Maybe every 3 weeks to a month, ask for a short follow-up phone call. So something that's casual so that they think of you as a colleague and casual. If somebody says, what are your expectations for compensation here? The best question is, what's the budget for this role? And they should tell you at least a range or a budget. And if they don't, you can just keep saying, what's the budget for this role? What I'm saying is, don't feel that you need to share your information first. And I know most of you already know this, but wanted to hit the big ones first. Let me tell you a story. I really want to give you a chief people officer perspective here, because I will tell you, when you're negotiating, the last person you think of is who's the head of HR and what are they going to say? You're not thinking about that. You're thinking about getting the job. You're thinking about your relationship with the hiring manager, talking through these things. But eventually, that's going to come back to me. That's going to come back to a person like me who is going to have to approve or not approve the super exorbitant and high and very valuable and worth it about you compensation or stock package that you've asked for. Eventually, it's going to come back to me. Here's how I think about these things. And the best situation that I've had, the best kinds of situations that I've had are when people, and either they're saying this to me directly. The reason they're often saying this to me directly is at a senior level, I am their point person on the HR team. So they're having a comp conversation with me. We've made them an offer. Here are things that are great. But when they say, I'm very excited, here's what's been wonderful in the conversations, here's what I'm interested in about this company, what would make me even more excited, and they add 50,000 or 100,000, they add some amount to their base, they add something possibly to their sign-on bonus. There are things that would make them more excited. It's very subtle. It doesn't say that this is a deal breaker from their side. So why does this approach work? It makes it feel like, oh, you HR team, you people team, you guys do what you can. I'm in it. I like this company. I would like to make this work. What would make this work even more effectively is this. I don't feel pressured. I don't feel like I have to, but I feel goodwill towards this person. They've already shared things are good for them and exciting in terms of this company, and they want to go just a little further. It doesn't seem cutthroat. It doesn't seem anything like that. There are lots of ways to ask for extra comp, and you should always ask for extra. If your personal circumstances make it feel like you don't want to ask for extra and where you are is where you are, that's fine. But you can always ask for extra. Is there an opportunity to do an extra 10K here? Is there an opportunity? There are ways that you can ask that are thoughtful and kind and collaborative ways. I don't want you to feel that the number that they've given you is the final number, unless, of course, they come to you and say that's the final number, which is really rare. But there are opportunities to ask for more, and this is one of the ways to ask for more. As you're doing this, feel free to have the hiring manager go to bat for you. This is another thing that's been effective when I've been inside on the HR team. If the hiring manager says, I have to work with this person is incredible. I know we interviewed this range of people. This is the specific skill set. We really have to make this work. That's when we can go right to the very top of the range, or even try to work with the other components so that it really works for that person. If your hiring manager is all about this is critical, this is key, the HR department is going to try to work with. I mean, if it's double the comp or something, which we would have tried to figure out earlier on in a comp conversation. But if your hiring manager is really for you, that strongly gets conveyed to the people who need to sign off on the final numbers. Way before you're in the negotiation phase, way before you've had an offer made to you, look up related salary on Glassdoor. I'm going to describe this in about 30 seconds. If you haven't done this, you should do this literally after. You go to Glassdoor, you say what your title is. You have things here. You have the jobs, company salaries. This is how simple it is, and this is why I want to show you in case you have not done this before. But this gives you a sense of what you should be expecting. And I know a number of jobs are remote, so this is what you should be expecting for a product manager in New York. It says 142.7. that doesn't have delineations on what level product manager. There's a lot there, and you can look for specific roles. So once you've done that, then you should write down what are your most important things. So here I've listed a ton of things. I've listed what your likely main things that are important to you. Your job title, as you just mentioned, your job title, base, bonus. Some companies don't have bonus, sign-on bonus. Some companies don't have some of these things, stock or options, whatever it is. Vacation, what is the vacation policy? Sometimes it's working with senior management or something about the aspect of your role that you can negotiate in advance. Your likely moderate category, and again, you might have something that I'm saying is moderate that might be your main things to negotiate. Your likely moderate category is, especially when I work with senior folks, they negotiate into their package that they're going to have an executive coach. Whether that's relevant or not, the coaching or continued education credits, training for yourself, your start date is negotiable, travel for work, when travel will be needed and how much. Some of these are going to be things that you will have discussed with your hiring manager for sure. What types of project? Maybe you prefer high visibility projects or projects of a certain type. Those are things you can discuss. Again, likely in the process, but again, in the negotiation process. To what degree is this hybrid, remote, in person? What is the specific thing you'll be doing? And then likely more minor items are a work from home stipend, parking, if there's parking that you're going to be doing all the time, commuting, relocation, if that's actually a thing, education stipend for the kids. This is for international jobs, and which is entirely different in some ways. So you're going to look up the expected salary, and then you're going to think for yourself, what are the most important things for me? And you'll talk with your partner, you'll talk with your family. What are the most important things for you? Please practice with a family member or a friend. And what I mean is practice actually you having this conversation about a comp. Let's say your expected comp is 120,000. And let's say the hiring manager gave you a call and Senya, we're so excited to be working with you. We're offering you 100,000. You may need to practice saying, thank you. I'm very excited. That's not what I expected. That's a very short phrase that doesn't need to have anything follow it. They'll ask you, what did you expect? And you've told them your salary expectations in advance. It usually happens earlier in the process. Then you can say, I'd be glad to think about this and get back to you. So think about it, get back, consider which things are more important for you. But this is what I mean by practice with a friend or family. So your family member says to you, okay, we're excited about you. The comp is 100,000. Thank you so much. Really interested, really enjoyed meeting these people. That's not what I was expecting. It doesn't mean you've said anything mean. And I say this because it's a hard phrase to say. I've had to practice this. Everyone has to practice something like this. But there's something about pausing and knowing that there's a continued conversation. You don't want that hiring manager or the recruiter, whoever called to give you the offer, you don't want that person to walk away and say, oh, we got that in the bag for sure. She's ready with 100K. She's going to sign. So you want to set expectations that you'll come back to them with something. That's why it's so important to practice with a family or a friend, because saying it at first, and you might follow, that was my interpretation of it's hard to say something when you're saying it for the first time. How do you say, especially when salaries are tight, how do you say, hey, here's what I'm seeing? Whether you say it in that conversation or you come back to them with this information. For this role and the amount of impact that's expected, and you can qualify that impact. If you're in sales, you can say, well, this is going to require speaking to people at the most senior levels. This is the kind of thing that's going to require somebody who is going to make an impact in this way. If you're a product manager, you're asking someone in this role to launch 3 products within 4 months. For that kind of impact, I am expecting a compensation of this. And you can break it down if that's needed. Here's the base, here's the bonus, and so on. I'm going to say this more slowly because I feel like I'm saying a lot of things all at once. This is the argument of the impact. I've actually seen a lot of people use this effectively, even though it may sound vague as I'm describing it here. You can be much more specific on the impact of the role. To what degree, if it's a director role, for example, do I want to have a discussion about coming in at a VP because then the company will be able to level me at a much higher range of comp? You may absolutely want to do that. And you may want to do that in the interview process. And companies aren't ideal, but ideally you either had a range on the job that you were applying for, or you've had that conversation with the recruiter who's told you what the expected range for this role is. In addition to the person being able to discuss what those expectations are, they can discuss the time frame. So that I should be able to do that in 6 months or in 9 months. Great. Now your manager hears that same time frame. Here's what I'm seeing in the market. And really, I hate to say this, But it's so true. If you discuss what's in that offer and it's higher than this offer, that is a big part of what you can do to up this offer. You already likely know this, but timing your interviews so that you do get 2 or 3 offers around the same time, or speeding up another offer, it's very effective. It's effective for the hiring manager. It's effective for the HR department. If you are that strong for the hiring manager, the HR department will try to make it work, whatever it is. They won't go crazy, but they will try to make it work. So shy of having another offer, which that would be amazing, but shy of having that, another thing you can say is, I'm interviewing for other roles. Here's what I'm seeing in the market. It's less strong than that's gold for you. I have this other offer. I really love this. I'd love to work with you. Here's what that offer is. Even if it's a verbal offer, you're getting the written offer within a day or two. And let me just say 2 last things. Once you say what you've said, like, here's what I'm seeing in the market, say it and stay quiet. It's so hard sometimes for the candidate to stay quiet. There are other reasons and other comments. Say what you need to say, or that's not what I was expecting. Have them ask what you were expecting. Have them ask, oh, when can you get back to me on the details of what you were expecting? It's so hard to stay quiet, which is why I say practice it with someone. Practice it several times with someone. And then I want to give you a couple of wild card phrases. So these are phrases that may be effective for you to use in that negotiation discussion, whether it's with an HR person or with the hiring manager. Phrases like, what amount would make someone fall out of their chair? Let's say the comp that I've been offered is 100,000 and I want 120. So I can talk about 120, but if the hiring manager says, I just don't know, I don't think HR will approve for this range and this, then you could ask in a conversational way, what's an amount that's going to make someone fall out of their chair? And the hiring manager might say, oh, I might be able to get to a 108 or something with you. You're talking. It's a phrase to get you to talk. And then this, I know this is going to sound heavy worded, but what is the amount in the budget for the impact you want this role to have? And then you're talking about the role again and the impact. This is especially important for more senior roles, because you can say this impact is company-wide, it's global, it's this, it's that, it's external facing. But really at any role, it's a way to turn it back to the discussion on the role rather than the amount, and then the amount would need to be consistent with the role. Let me summarize. We talked about leading to closing with more confidence, and then we talked about negotiating. Getting towards the place of closing, we talked about kind follow-ups, which don't use the words of let me follow up. And so we had a couple of ideas here, things like 12 to 15 pieces of content that are useful pieces of content. We also talked about things that are related to me and the conversation that you had with me. Oh, I thought you'd enjoy seeing this thing that I had worked on previous. Then we talked about negotiating. And with negotiating, if that excitement conveyability, that I'm excited and I have some flexibility, I'd love to see this. This would really get me super excited. It's just so conversational. It's so human. And you can imagine that this person has a life. This person is going to go home to their partner and say, oh, I was able to get this. Like, isn't that great? So you're cheering for that person, even though you're the hiring manager or the HR team. And then we talked about the things to do way before, like Glassdoor.com, prioritize what's important to you. We talked about what to do before, which is practice with a friend and practice a few ways of saying, these were the expectations. This is how I would think about it given this role. Then we talked about staying quiet during. We just talked about that. And then we mentioned a few wild card phrases. What is one thing you're taking away, either about closing and getting towards closing, so your follow-ups, or one thing about negotiation? What is something you're taking away as something either you'll think on or you may act on? Let me remind you of something that I mentioned a long time ago. I really like the book Humor Seriously. It's humor, seriously. And one thing that suggests is whomever you interview with, whatever point in that conversation that both of you had the most energy or lit up or actually laughed, asterisk that or star it or circle it, circle the topic you were talking about, because that's what you should reference when you're in email contact with that person afterwards. Please always negotiate, because you can negotiate in a thoughtful, kind way. But I know on the backside, there is wiggle room. Keep in mind that when negotiating, the company does not want to lose you. You are in a really good position. You're in the best position possible to make a change to your comp at that point at the end. The company has rejected the other candidates. They may not have called the other candidates and told them they're rejected because they're still negotiating with you, but they do not want to lose you. They don't want to lose it. It's better to negotiate up front. Don't try to get more afterwards. Enjoyed speaking with you. Thanks, and catch you soon. All the best.